Hi everybody, it is April and I am in my craft room, and today we are going to make a quilt pattern called Ribbons from the 3-Yard Quilt book, Quilts on the Double. What you see behind me or beside me, depending on where I'm standing, is my first attempt at the quilt pattern called Ribbons. I thought the ribbons pattern would be appropriate to use for a breast cancer awareness themed quilt. You know, the pink ribbon and ribbons. This is not perfect, as I discovered after I'd put it together. So join me as I make the ribbons pattern using some breast cancer awareness themed fabric, and I will share with you how to avoid some pitfalls. I'm not even gonna lie, this is not the easiest 3-yard quilt pattern, but it does turn out a pretty quilt. So I'm going to try it again and we'll see what happens. It's not hard, it just is a little tedious. There are 30 half square triangles, and that is part of what makes it a little tedious. And actually, I think there are 60, truth be told. So let's go through the fabric that I'm going to use for this quilt. I'll tell you which fabric it is, and we'll get started cutting. Here is my breast cancer awareness fabric. It is by Timeless Treasures. This will be fabric 1. This is fabric 2. It is a Kimber Bell Basic White. And hopefully you can see the little swirl. Fabric 3 is called Shadow Blush for Quilter's Pattern 2045. Those are my 3 fabrics. I don't know if you're familiar with the 3-yard quilts, so I'm going to give you just a quick rundown about how they work. It is 3 yards of fabric if you want a lap size quilt. So you have fabric 1, which is your feature fabric. Fabric 2, which is a lighter of the next 2 fabrics, and fabric 3 will be your darkest fabric between fabrics 2 and fabrics 3. You can add more fabric of the 1, 2, and 3, and that will enable you to make more blocks and a bigger quilt. You can also just add borders to the lap size and make it as big as you like. It makes it fun and easy to use coordinating fabrics that are part of a fabric line. You don't have to just use the 3 fabrics. You can take your favorite 3, use those for the main part of the quilt, and then add the borders using the rest of the coordinating fabric. That's one of the reasons I really enjoy these. And normally they're pretty quick to put together. This one happens to be an exception, and it isn't hard. You just have to pay attention. And you know, squirrels run all over my house all the time. So I'm constantly, ooh, squirrel, 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 squirrel. So that makes it a little harder for me. However, we will power through and we will get this quilt done. The first thing I'm going to do is cut my 3 fabrics. Now, I cannot give you measurements. If you want the measurements, then go out to Fabric Cafe, or I'll put a link for Amazon and Fabric Cafe in the description, and get Quilts on the Go. It is one of 7 patterns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, I'm sorry. It is one of 8 patterns that is available to you in this book. The nice thing about this is all 3 fabrics are cut exactly the same way. So once you figure out how to cut fabric 1, you will cut fabric 2 and fabric 3 the same way that you did fabric 1. If you only have 1 yard of each of your 3 fabrics, don't be overly generous when you are straightening your edge, because you will use every bit of those 3 yards most of the time, and this pattern is no exception. Now that I've straightened out my fabric edge, I'm going to cut 3 skinny strips And skinny is in relation to the one wide strip that I will be cutting out. Now that I'm done cutting out fabric 1, I will cut the other 2 fabrics just like this, and then I'll be right back to show you the next steps. As you can see, I have my stacks of fabric. This is fabric 1, this is fabric 2, and that is fabric 3. This is where it becomes a little tedious because you have all of these squares that are going to become half square triangle blocks. The first thing we want to do is use a fabric marking pen, and you're going to have 3 sets of 10. So let's see, the first we want to put 1 and 2 together. So you're going to put right sides together. I do have a tool that will lay over this. Okay, so you make sure your point goes through where you can see your point through this slit in this ruler, and you're going to mark halfway. Now this line is where you will end up cutting these half square triangles in half. So don't worry about that showing through. Just make sure you mark it on the right side. Then you're going to put right sides together. So that is one of a set of 10 of fabric 1 and 2. Then you're going to have a set of 10 with fabric 2 and fabric 3. So you can either take your half square triangle tool, or you can just take a regular ruler, go just to the edge of your corners and mark halfway. And then you're going to put right sides together. These are all light fabrics, so I could do this on any of them. This is your second set of 10. And then you have a third set of 10, which consists of fabric 1 and 3. So these 2 together. You can also use, as opposed to a pen, you can use a pen that's got disappearing ink. And this just disappears over time when it is exposed to air. And this time I'll do it on the pink, and I've got a green marker. So if you leave these sitting for a while and don't do them immediately, this line will disappear. The more humid it is, the more quickly it disappears. And there is that line. Now what we're going to do is we're going to sew on each side with a scant 1/4 inch. That means not a full 1/4 inch, but just inside a 1/4 inch. And you can line your foot up on this line. Normally, I would go with the edge of my foot right on this line. But because I want to do a scant 1/4 inch, I will go inside this line just a little. So instead of being able to see that line on the outside of my foot, I'm going to see it on the inside. So I get that scant 1/4 inch. And then we can chain piece these, which makes the sewing faster. So I just line up this line right on the inside of my foot, and I slow down when I come to where I'm not actually going to be sewing fabric. And then once I hit my fabric, I can put the pedal to the metal. Same thing with this one. Now don't get too excited because we're not done yet. You have to flip them over and do the other side. So let's take these to the cutting table and I'll show you the rest of the process. I've marked my block and I have sewn on each side of the seam. Now I will trim down the center. And here I have 2 half square triangle blocks. Before you open these, you take your ruler, clearly perfect slotted trimmers. You line it up on the line where your seam is. You trim around the outside. You trim here in the little notch to get rid of your dog ears. Sometimes that notch is hard to hit. And then you open it, and it is a perfect half square triangle block. And all you need to do is press it. Here we have the different units that we're going to make in order to create the blocks for our quilt. This unit consists of this rectangle of fabric 1 and a half square triangle block with fabric 1 and fabric 2. Your next unit is unit B. You have the rectangle of fabric 2 and a half square triangle of fabric 2 and fabric 1. The next block is a triangle of fabric 1, sorry, that's a rectangle, and a half square triangle with fabric 1 and fabric 3. Then you have unit D. This is a rectangle of fabric 3 and a half square triangle with fabric 3 and fabric 1. Then you have your unit E, rectangle of fabric 2, half square triangle with fabric 2 and fabric 3. Then you have a rectangle of fabric 3, your half square triangle block was with fabric 3 and fabric 2, and that is unit F. Be very careful. These half square triangle units need to be placed in a specific way on each of these units in order to make up your blocks. So I will sew all of these units together, and then I will come back and show you how to make your blocks. Now you're going to sew your blocks. Block A is made up of unit F and unit A. I'm not sure why they didn't do A, B, C, D, E, F, but they didn't. And unit A is flipped the opposite way. So you've got fabric 2 on the outside of the top and the outside of the bottom. Block B is made up of unit B and unit D. Again, fabric 1 is on the outside of the top and the outside of the bottom. Block C is made up of unit C and unit E. Fabric 3 is on the outside of the top and the outside of the bottom. So you sew these together to make the blocks that you will use to make up your ribbons quilt. So you have block A, block B, and block C. Here are the centers of the ribbon quilts. This is the center that I did first. And as you can see, this doesn't look as much like a ribbon going through as this one. The only difference is I took my time when I was working on this. And I think that's it. You just have to slow down and pay attention to what you're doing. The pattern calls for smaller borders, like really skinny borders around the outside. I'm going to put wider borders. I think fabric 3 is going to be my first border around the outside. And then I happened to find another fabric. I was on a retreat in between starting this and now finishing this, and I went to the cutest little quilt shop called Scrappy Patches Quilting. If you are ever in Brownstown, Indiana, stop by. If you ever just want to go to a cute little quilt shop, I suggest a road trip. I'll put a link in the description below. They had this fabric. So I think what I'm going to do is, after I border in my fabric 3, I think I'm going to use this as a border. I'm going to go put these borders on this quilt, show you the final product. As you can see, my quilt top is complete. So I ended up going with a 3.5 inch strip on this border around the middle part, and that ends up being 3 inches. And then I did a 5.5 inch strip on the outside. So there is a little more snuggle room under this quilt. I'm just so pleased with the way that it turned out. Breast cancer awareness is near and dear to my heart. Although I have not had breast cancer, I am at a higher risk for breast cancer. So get your mammogram. I won't preach anymore. A friend of mine has just recently been diagnosed with breast cancer, and this quilt is going to be for her. Thank you everyone for watching. I truly appreciate it. Have a great day. Eat some chocolate and be kind to everyone. Until next time, bye. All right, it is still candy corn season. So I have candy corn and honey roasted peanuts. They tell me it tastes like a payday. I have not eaten a payday, but if this is what a payday tastes like, a payday covered in chocolate would be great. So here's to the fall and candy corn and honey roasted peanuts. Themed quilt. How to cut your fabric, etc. And I don't like that at all. This quilt using some I don't know if you're familiar with the so it makes it fun and easy to use it makes it fun and easy. Okay. These are called yeah. These are called oh my gosh. Hi Maxine, come here. You say hi. You want to say hi?